I want you to stop for just a moment and do something simple. Place your hands on the table in front of you or just hold them up in the light. Take a long, steady look at your fingernails. Don't worry about how they look cosmetically, or whether they've been trimmed or polished recently. I want you to look at the surface, the shape, the tiny details at the base, and the way the skin meets the nail. Most people go their entire lives without truly seeing what their nails are trying to say. We treat them like accessories, but your body treats them like a dashboard. Right now, your nails may be displaying quiet, subtle warning signs that your nervous system, your heart, and your internal organs have been trying to communicate for months, perhaps even years. I am a doctor, and I have spent decades analyzing the way systemic health issues whisper their arrival through the body's most overlooked extremities. It is a fundamental truth in medicine that your nails are not just keratin, they are biological data. After the age of 60, the margin of safety for your body changes. The reserves that helped you shrug off minor internal imbalances in your 40s or 50s have thinned. This isn't a failure of aging. It's a shift in how your body manages stress. In this narrowing window, your nails become one of the only places where your body still leaves a permanent, visible record of internal shifts. Today, we are going to look at 4 specific nail changes that are linked in modern clinical research to conditions that disproportionately affect older adults, conditions involving your brain, your circulation, and your metabolic health. These aren't obscure, rare diseases. They are common, often manageable issues that your doctor likely hasn't mentioned, not because they are ignoring you, but because a standard checkup simply doesn't allow for the time to look at the hidden map of your health. The 4th sign, the one I have saved for last, is what I see most often in patients who have spent years chasing vague symptoms like fatigue, mild brain fog, or persistent tingling, never realizing the answer was sitting on their fingertips. I'm going to show you exactly how to read these signs, and more importantly, what to do about them before they turn into a crisis. To understand why your nails are such a reliable window into your health, we have to look past the surface. Think of your fingernails as a biological timeline. They grow from the nail matrix, a specialized structure tucked securely beneath your cuticle. Unlike skin, which sheds and renews itself constantly, your nails are a slow-growing, permanent record. They grow at a steady rate, roughly 3 millimeters every month. This means that if you see a mark, a change in color, or an altered texture on your nail today, it is essentially a snapshot of what was happening inside your bloodstream and your internal environment weeks or even months ago. When we are younger, our bodies are remarkably resilient. If there is a slight nutritional gap, a brief period of inflammation, or a minor dip in metabolic efficiency, our system corrects it on the fly. You might not see a single sign because your body is paying the difference out of its reserve funds. But after 60, those reserves are not as deep. The peripheral nervous system, the network of nerves that reaches into your fingers and toes, becomes more sensitive to changes in blood flow and nutrient delivery. Because the nail matrix is fed by these very same tiny peripheral vessels, it becomes highly susceptible to even small shifts in your internal chemistry. It acts like a canary in a coal mine. It starts to change its output, the shape, the thickness, or the clarity of the nail, long before a more dramatic symptom, like dizziness or significant memory loss, forces you to sit up and take notice. Many of my patients feel frustrated when they realize that these changes have been happening under their noses for years, but never mentioned during their routine physicals. Please understand, there is a very practical reason for this. Primary care medicine is designed to screen for immediate high-priority issues: your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your blood sugar, and your current symptoms. A physician is trained to look for what is urgent. Nail analysis, while deeply rooted in diagnostic history, is a fine-tuning tool. It requires a patient-doctor partnership where you are empowered to point out what you have observed at home. By the time a sign becomes alarmingly obvious to a busy doctor in a 3-minute exam, it has often been present for a long time. My goal today is to bridge that gap. I want to give you the clinical vocabulary and the observational skills to take charge of this screening process yourself, so you can arrive at your next appointment with data, not just vague concerns. We are looking for the patterns, the departures from your normal, that act as a signal to investigate further. Let me tell you about a patient of mine. Let's call her Eleanor. She was 64, a retired librarian who prided herself on being observant. Eleanor came to me because she felt off. That is a phrase I hear a lot, and it is perhaps the most important one in medicine. She described a subtle decline, a bit of fatigue, a lingering sense that her focus wasn't as sharp as it had been, and some persistent, annoying tingling in her fingertips that she'd chalked up to arthritis. During her first visit, I asked her about her symptoms, and she gave me the standard, "I'm just getting older, doctor." But when I looked at her hands, not to check her pulse, but to look at her nails, I saw a map. Her nails were brittle, which she knew, but there were tiny horizontal indentations that she had completely ignored. She thought they were just marks from doing housework. To her, they were physical scars from a life lived. To me, they were a chronicle of a metabolic struggle that had been quietly unfolding for 18 months. Eleanor's story is not unique. It represents the silent period of chronic illness. Most people, when they look at their nails, are looking for problems like fungus or damage. They aren't looking for the subtle, systemic narrative. When I asked her about her diet and her medications, she mentioned she had been taking a common acid-blocking medication for years because of chronic heartburn. At the time, she didn't see the connection. Why would a heartburn pill change the appearance of her fingernails? It didn't make sense to her. But that is exactly the point. Our bodies are interconnected systems where a change in stomach acidity can, over years, lead to a deficit in how we absorb essential minerals and vitamins, specifically B12. And that deficiency manifests first in the most metabolically active tissues, like the ones growing your nails. Eleanor had been experiencing the early subclinical stages of a nervous system strain, and her nails had been trying to tell her long before her hands started tingling. She had been living with a slow-motion warning. By the time we looked at her labs, we found exactly what her nails had predicted. We adjusted her medication, addressed her nutrient levels, and within months, she wasn't just feeling better. She was back to her old self. The tingling faded. The fog lifted. The lesson here is simple. You have the ability to read this map too. It doesn't require a medical degree. It just requires a change in perspective. You are not just looking at fingernails. You are looking at the health of your internal systems manifesting in the only place they can. Let's move to the first major category, metabolic signals. When we talk about metabolism, we aren't just talking about weight or digestion. We are talking about how your body processes energy and clears away the exhaust of living, the metabolic waste products that, if left to accumulate, become toxic. One of the most telling signs I look for is a change in the nail's surface texture, specifically those horizontal grooves I mentioned earlier, known medically as Beau's lines. Now listen closely. A single Beau's line that appeared after a high fever or a major stressful infection is often a one-time event. Your body hit a pause button on nail growth, and once you recovered, the growth resumed. But if you see recurring grooves, multiple lines that appear over time, or lines that don't seem linked to a specific acute illness, that is a red flag for chronic metabolic stress. In adults over 60, this is frequently linked to early-stage kidney function decline. Think of your kidneys as your body's sophisticated filtration system. When they struggle to clear out nitrogenous waste products like urea, that waste circulates in the blood. Because your nail matrix cells are some of the fastest dividing cells in your entire body, they are incredibly sensitive to these circulating toxins. Even before your creatinine levels look off on a routine blood panel, your nails might be showing you the early signs of that filtration struggle. There is another metabolic sign that often pairs with this: half-and-half nails, or Lindsay's nails. Imagine your nail is split horizontally. The base near the cuticle looks unusually pale or white, while the top half, the part toward the tip, retains a normal pinkish or brownish hue. That sharp division is a classic documented finding in chronic kidney conditions. What I want you to do today is stop dismissing these changes as just part of getting older. Aging changes the texture of the nail. It might get a bit thicker or develop very fine symmetric ridges, but it does not create deep horizontal grooves, and it does not create a clean color split across the nail plate. If you see these signs, you aren't seeing normal aging. You are seeing an important signal from your body that your metabolic filtration system is under a level of stress that warrants a simple, preventative conversation with your doctor. It is about catching a shift when it is still small and manageable, rather than waiting for a crisis to force the issue. Tone shift, slightly more urgent, intense. I need to stop for a second because what I'm about to say might challenge what you've been told for decades. We are often taught that if we don't have pain, we don't have a problem. But the most dangerous conditions, the ones that steal your independence and your quality of life, rarely start with pain. They start with silence. They start with a slow, invisible drift in your chemistry that your brain ignores because it's busy trying to keep you moving through your day. If you are waiting for a clear, painful alarm bell to sound before you take your own health seriously, you are playing a game you are likely to lose. Your body doesn't speak in alarms. It speaks in signs, and right now you are learning to read them. Tone, warm, engaging. Quick favor before we go further. Drop your city, state, or country in the comments. When I see where people are watching from, it helps me tailor the advice for what you're dealing with where you live. I read everyone. It gives me a sense of the community I'm helping, and it reminds me that this isn't just theory. This is real life for people everywhere. Now stay with me, because what I'm going to share next is the one thing most of my peers will never tell you about how your brain connects to your fingertips. This isn't just about nails. It's about the subtle, ignored symptoms that precede a major neurological shift. I've seen people ignore these for years, only to wish they had known how to connect the dots sooner. We are moving into the neurological signs, the ones that tell you your nerves are literally running out of the resources they need to keep you balanced, sharp, and steady. You don't want to miss this. Now, let's talk about the nervous system. As we age, the integrity of our peripheral nerves, the wires that run from your spine out to your extremities, becomes paramount. But there is a specific, often overlooked sign that appears on your nails that serves as a direct indicator of neurological health: the state of your lunula. Take a look at your thumbnails. Do you see that pale, crescent-shaped arc sitting right at the base, just above the cuticle? That is your lunula. It's the visible living zone of your nail matrix. In a healthy, robust system, that crescent should be clear and distinct. But what happens if it disappears? What if it's no longer visible on your thumbs, or if it has retreated completely under the skin of your cuticle? This is a sign of what we call nail matrix atrophy. And in the context of neurological health, it is a marker I watch very closely. It is frequently associated with deep nutritional deficiencies, particularly vitamin B12, which are essential for maintaining the myelin sheath, the fatty protective coating that insulates your nerve fibers. Without enough B12, that insulation begins to fail. Your nerves start to misfire. You might feel this as tingling in your hands, or a sense of numbness in your toes, or perhaps a subtle loss of balance when you're walking. Many people dismiss these as old age symptoms. But if your lunulae are disappearing, your body is telling you that the systemic environment is no longer providing the resources necessary to maintain the structural integrity of your nerve pathways. Then there is another sign: koilonychia, or spoon nails. If you look at your nail from the side and see the center dip downward, creating a concave shape that could hold a tiny drop of water, that is a classic physical finding of severe iron deficiency. But I want you to understand the brain side of this. Iron is the fuel for your neurotransmitters, like dopamine. When your iron levels drop, it isn't just about feeling tired. It is about your executive function, your ability to focus, to recall a memory, to think clearly, starting to slow down. If you have noticed both these nail shapes and a persistent mental fog that won't lift, you are looking at a neurological bottleneck. These aren't just nail problems. They are systemic warnings that your brain and your spinal cord are struggling to get the metabolic energy they need to function at full speed. This is reversible, but it requires you to be the one to bridge the gap and start the conversation with your doctor. I know that to many of you, these links between fingernails and internal health sound like something out of a textbook from 100 years ago. But the science is not only modern, it is robust. A landmark review published in the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology analyzed the clinical utility of nail findings in internal medicine. The researchers confirmed that the nail apparatus is frequently the first site of clinical manifestation for systemic diseases precisely because the nail matrix is so hyper-metabolically active. What that study and subsequent research in the New England Journal of Medicine highlight is that the peripheral marker effect is real. For instance, when we see structural changes like the ones we've discussed, longitudinal ridging or the loss of the lunula, it correlates strongly with decreased autonomic nerve function. This isn't guesswork. This is the physiological result of your body diverting resources away from non-essential growth tissues to protect vital systemic functions. Think of it like a power grid in a city during a heat wave. The grid begins to brown out in the areas that are least critical to the survival of the center. In this case, your extremities, long before the entire system goes dark. The research shows that this brownout in the nail matrix can precede the onset of clinically significant neurological or renal symptoms by months and sometimes years. Another study focusing specifically on iron deficiency anemia in patients over 60 found that structural changes to the nail plate, including koilonychia, were present in nearly 30% of cases where cognitive decline was the primary presenting complaint. When those patients were treated and their iron levels restored, a significant subset showed measurable improvements in cognitive processing speed and memory retention. This is the evidence that validates your intuition. Your eyes are not playing tricks on you. When you look down at your hands and feel that something has changed, you are identifying a data point that is backed by decades of dermatological and neurological research. The tragedy is not that these signs exist. The tragedy is that they are so often dismissed because they are viewed in isolation. When you bring these findings to your doctor, you are not just bringing a nail concern. You are bringing a documented clinical indicator that deserves a thorough, evidence-based investigation. Now, let's turn this into an action plan. You have the knowledge. Now let's apply it. I want you to perform a simple diagnostic review this week. Do not rush this. Treat it as an investment in your long-term independence. First, find a room with bright, natural daylight. A window is perfect. Avoid harsh, overhead fluorescent lights that wash out color and texture. Place both hands side by side on a flat, neutral surface. I want you to examine each nail, thumb to pinky, on both hands. Look for asymmetry. Is the ridging or brittleness significantly worse on your dominant hand compared to your non-dominant hand? If so, note it down. Now check the horizontal lines. Run your thumbnail gently across the surface of your other nails. Do you feel a snag, a ridge, or a groove? If you find a groove that doesn't disappear when the nail grows out, or that keeps reappearing, note the frequency and which fingers are affected. Next, look from the side profile. Does your nail form a perfect arch, or is it flattening and curling upward at the edges? Take a photograph of your hands. Keep the camera close enough to capture the cuticle and the lunula, that pale half-moon. Date the photo and keep it in a folder on your phone. This gives you a baseline for next month or next year. Now take a blank piece of paper. List any symptoms you have been dismissing for the past year. The occasional brain fog, the tingling in your fingers at night, the unexplained fatigue, the leg cramps, or the subtle change in your handwriting. If you have found two or more of the signs we discussed, the deep asymmetric ridging, the recurring horizontal grooves, the spooning shape, or the disappearing lunulae, or if you have even one of these signs paired with any of those neurological or metabolic symptoms, you are going to call your doctor's office. Don't wait for your annual physical. Call them and be specific. Tell the receptionist, I have noticed some physical changes in my fingernails that my research suggests could be related to my metabolic and neurological health. I would like a consultation to discuss these findings and to request a blood panel, specifically a B12 level, an iron study, and a metabolic panel for kidney function. This is not demanding a diagnosis. It is acting as a partner in your own health care. You are providing your physician with the observations they need to do their best work. Most doctors appreciate a patient who comes prepared with clear, longitudinal data. You are taking control, and that, in itself, is the most important step toward maintaining your health for the decades ahead. Before we close, I want to leave you with this. Your body is a masterpiece of communication. It has been your most loyal companion for 60, 70, or even 80 years. It has navigated challenges, healed from injuries, and adapted to every season of your life. The signs we talked about today, the ridges, the grooves, the shape, the hidden crescents, these aren't failures. They are simply your body's way of saying, pay attention. I need a little extra support here. Most people ignore these signals, choosing to live with the fatigue, the brain fog, or the minor neurological twinges, simply because they don't know that these things can be connected, and more importantly, they don't know they can be changed. But you are not most people. You now have the vocabulary to read your own health data. You have the map, and you have the plan. If you found value in what we covered today, please share this video. Send it to a friend, a neighbor, or a family member who is also navigating their 60s or beyond. Sometimes the most important gift you can give someone is the knowledge that their health is not a mystery. It is something they can understand, manage, and protect. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit that button and turn on notifications. We are building a community here for people who believe that high-quality health information belongs to everyone, not just those inside a consulting room. In our next session, we're going to dive into how your sense of smell serves as a gatekeeper for your long-term cognitive health, another connection most people miss entirely. In the comments below, I want to hear from you one last time. Are your lunulae visible on your thumbs today? And what is one symptom you've been dismissing that you're finally going to investigate? I read every one of your comments, and I look forward to hearing your stories. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and continue to take great care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.